Okay, so we talked a lot about your time in the monastery, but you were kind of vague, and I feel like that was a major part of your life, and there were a lot of experiences within that were more significant than it seems. And you talk about that time of your life a lot, and I feel like you still have habits that you picked up there.
It's true. I suppose I am kind of vague because the monastic life really consists of several components, and they're done all the time, and they're not generally looked at as meaningful or important by most people. There's a daily mass in a Christian monastery. There's daily meditation. There's daily lectio, which is spiritual or inspirational reading. There's work every day. There's some kind of recreation or leisure time, a little bit of it every day. There's writing, and those are all important things that go round and round each day. Those are part of the day. And so they're important to me still. They were important then, and they're still important now. And so to talk about them is to really go, let me say it a different way. To talk about them is to start to get into the details of the mystical life.
That's what I'm looking for.
Um,
Because when I think of mystical life, monastery life does not seem to fall under that category. So I guess I'm trying to understand how. I don't know, the whole like monk thing seems so strict and so formal and so not mystical and ethereal and fun. But you talk about it that it's not like that. And so I'm trying to understand why.
Fun, that's an interesting concept. What makes it fun is because of the utter freedom, although it wouldn't seem that way, the utter freedom that the monastic life represents from all concern. One learns to embrace life and death as one. And so, what can disturb a person after that?
I'm not talking about a person, I'm talking about you.
What could disturb me after that? Uh, Learning to embrace death along with life
How did you learn that?
through spiritual reading, inspirational reading, study, listening to lectures, meditation, and meditation being the centerpiece of all of that, which provides a student, a seeker, a monk, anyone with the opportunity to think deeply about these things in the early stages of meditation, which is called discursive meditation, thinking about things deeply, staying with them, penetrating them, not touching on them in a cursorial or a light way. So deep thought about things brings the next beautiful thing, which is insights.
How long were you there before you started getting insights?
Right away, I began to get insights, but they were uh, shallow and mostly related to behavior, behaving in ways that were more conducive to peacefulness, inner peace, inner quiet. It seems, I suppose, interesting at least, if not silly, for a young person, a 20-something person in a monastery, to be seeking peace, be seeking quiet, rather than activity and adventure. But that was what I should say, I sacrificed those things in order to learn the deeper meaning of life. Later on, you would find in asking me questions that adventure was to come, and I had not gotten sufficient adventure, and that's one of the reasons I left the monastery.
So you thought that in the monastery you could just overcome anything else you needed to do?
Yes, I could bypass all of the vagaries of life and learn how to embrace death along with life as one and the same, and be utterly happy, which I was.
I don't know, when you were being disciplined, did it feel good? Or did you know that it was going to be good? And if so, how did you know that?
Discipline felt good because it led to other things, success and skillfulness in living. Discipline was one of the ways to avoid the dramas that people bring to life.
You were in the monastery, though. How much drama was there?
There's still drama there. There's still, it's almost like the life of worms or the life of leaves. Even though they're very quiet, there's still a drama going on. A worm finds a worm to mate with. How do they do that? A flower finds another flower to share its pollen with. How does it do that? It somehow knows how to do that. And in the monastery, issues, jealousies, competitions, insecurities, attitudes were there, even though they weren't always graphically manifesting.
Well, what was your problem? Like, what was your vice?
Well, I may sound rather arrogant, but I didn't really seem to have many vices. I escaped a lot of the drama by being true to myself and staying within my own space of my mind.
What were you working on then?
Finer points of discipline, the finer points of letting things go.
How could you do that?
Meditation was one of the main ways. Reporting to my master what I was doing and being truthful about what I was feeling inside. A kind of quiet, or shall we say, low-level psychotherapy.
So what you're saying, I think, is that you got to the monastery, you jumped right into the discipline, and it just worked out really well for you, and you didn't have to go through any serious trials of
No,
anything?
the trials were at home, actually, and the dramas at home in my prior life with family. That's where the dramas were, that I would try to escape every day before school, even running down to the creek, even when the wind was blowing. I still do it now. I go out in the cold and wet and run and jog for exercise and for still seeing it as fun like I did when I was a child, getting away from all of the dramas of my family and leaving home and going to a monastery where drama was almost non-existent, at first anyway, was good for me. So discipline was good. Learning how to stay away from issues and dramas of life and of thoughts. Learning how to quell them, quiet them, dismiss them, escape them.
Well, you sound pretty skilled. So at that time of your life in the monastery, on a level of like 1 to enlightenment, where did you fall?
1, 0.
But you sound like you had it really together.
I did, but in terms of the enlightenment or in terms of the self-realization, 1 or 0. But in terms of optimal path and opportunity, 9.
Oh, so like you were just a really skillful human and you were able to make the right decisions and do the right thing?
It seemed I was really a shoe-in, a candidate for this kind of life.
Okay, so when you got there, was it like, this is where I belong?
Oh yes, from the moment I stepped out of the car onto monastic property, 1,000 acres of men seeking higher order consciousness, it was, this is where I belong.
It's interesting that you saw it as seeking higher order consciousness, because a lot of people don't see religion that way.
I was not upset with the idea of the path and the journey and the cost there would be in discipline and effort to get what I wanted. The idea that it was there for the taking if I went after it was so big that the journey and going through the vagaries of life to get enlightenment and to get free and live in the truth. And the peacefulness that brought was that big, was so big that all of the other things were, all of the things that were required to get there, inner quiet, clear vision, compassion, that was all easy for me. That was all easy to do. And again, I must say that because of it, I was treated like that by the monks. I gained status very early, and I was placed in positions of authority and teaching, education, before I should have been ready. By the time I was 23, I was a monk traveling the world, giving lectures and teaching the things that I had already learned. And I wasn't done.
Were you preaching to people about Jesus?
No, I was preaching to people about meditation and learning discipline, and Jesus was behind it. Jesus was the master behind all of this. The teachings of Jesus from the Bible were not about Jesus, they were about truth. So I was teaching the same kind of truths that you would find in the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or the Dhammapada or the Upanishads.
How did you have the confidence to do that? Like, how did you know that what you were doing was right? And how were you able to do it?
I didn't know the formula then, but the formula is simply peace. A peaceful experience is a pleasant one for the organism, whether it's physical or whether it's psychological. It's peaceful. It's less stress, means more contentment, more peace, maybe more joy. So it's right there, and it's one of the principles of discernment, is to examine the experience that you have. Is it peaceful? Not is it pleasurable or painful. Pain doesn't bring any peace, does it? So pain is not generally good, but pain may bring peace if pain is giving, let's say, an inoculation or cutting out a tumor. Pain is going to bring relief. So it's the wisdom to be able to discern between what is truly peaceful or going to bring peace and what is going to bring disturbance and suffering. And that those concepts are taught in monastic tradition, all monastic traditions. It isn't just the Christian.
Why do you think that whole side of monastic life is so hidden from the world? Because I bet if you asked a lot of people what they thought monastery life was like, it would not be anything like what you just explained.
In keeping with what you just said, the famous Thomas Merton, one of the most famous monks of all time, who was a Catholic Trappist monk, said, quote, "The best kept secret in the Catholic Church is meditation," unquote. And so it's true, the day-to-day average Christian, Catholic as well as all Christians, don't know anything about what I'm talking about. But they don't seek it. I didn't know until I sought it. It was there. And I didn't seek it because I thought about monastic life. I sought it because I was aware of being duped into believing that the dinosaurs, by a Catholic priest, the dinosaurs were not the truth, that the earth was only so many thousands of years old. And that was a religious teaching, not a scientific or a truth teaching. So I didn't know that the monks were going to teach me that, but I knew that somewhere the truth lived and existed, and I would find it. And so the monastic life was where I did find these priests, these Catholic monk priests, not Catholic secular parish priests, Catholic monk priests, those who take vows of poverty, chastity and obedience to a master had the truth for me.